We all know the story of magic in Demon Souls. Even if we put aside the infamous Firestorm, most of the other spells have the same issue. The issue being that they are simply too powerful, so much so that they can trivialize the game even for inexperienced players. There's no doubt that part of their power can be attributed to the fact that MP can be recovered infinitely. If you just take the time to farm for a full stack of spices at the start of the game. This was such a problem that Dark Souls introduced limits to spell usage in an attempt to quell their raging power, and they never tried to implement an MP bar again until much later in Dark Souls 3. Usually, one can spam away, knowing that there's no consequences to using up your MP bar. After all, you can pop a spice and fill it back up in 1 second. But what if you couldn't? What if, like Dark Souls, you had to think about how many spells you're using and conserve them throughout the level? That's what I'm going to test in this video. I'm going to see how much of a difference it makes if you can't recover your MP at all. This means I can't use spices, the fragrant ring, or crescent weapons. But that alone isn't enough. We're only using magic, so we can't switch to a melee weapon to cheat the system and save our spells. We must make it through each level with only 1 MP bar and manage to save enough of it for the area boss. This means we're going to have to actually develop a strategy when going through the levels. For example, we have to decide which enemies are worth engaging with, and which ones we can try to run past to progress. We also have to be smart with terrain usage. There are many ways to trick enemies into falling off of cliffs or running into obstacles. Lastly, to make this more challenging, I'm going to impose a level limit. There wouldn't be a challenge if I simply maxed out my MP bar, so for this challenge, I can only level intelligence to 30, which is when MP reaches 200, the maximum amount required for any spell. However, I may use any gear to increase my MP if I wish. As for my actual spell power stats, Magic and Faith, I will only level them to 20, which translates to 2000 Magic and Miracle power respectively. That way, I can use any catalyst I want and have good damage, but not be ridiculously overleveled. I won't be leveling any stats that aren't necessary, so I can't get more health or stamina. As usual, duplication is allowed, but the only thing I will be duplicating in this run is boss souls, because my goal is to use every spell at least once, and some souls can be used to make more than one spell. It wouldn't be interesting if I just firestormed everything and called it a day, so I'll try to control myself. It won't be hard to use every spell. There are more bosses than spells, so we'll get a good chance to play around and showcase the abilities of each spell. To start the challenge, I chose the Royalty class because I preferred to start out with more of a balance between Magic and Faith. This class starts out with Soul Arrow, a simple spell that does decent magic damage and has a very low MP cost. The Royalty class also starts with the Silver Coronet and Silver Catalyst for a 40% increase to MP, which is very useful, especially in the beginning when we can't level yet. So far, there aren't any problems. We one-shot practically everything here and have lots of MP to spare for most of the level. The only time MP starts to become an issue is at the very end when we reach the heavily guarded Dragon Bridge. While we can rely on the dragon to finish off most of them, I ended up with a huge horde of them chasing me back to the staircase. So I'll have to do what we called training in COD Zombies, and run around in a circle until I have the situation under control. In this case, the enemy AI isn't smart enough to stay aggroed, so I just ended up with a cult gathering for their first meeting. That's none of my business anyway, so I can move on to the Phalanx and unlock the rest of the game. To be honest with you, I was a little worried about this one. Killing all of its minions is out of the question, so it will be tricky to find an opening to hit its main body. I have to be really careful here. If I miss too many shots, I won't have enough MP left to kill it. I also have to be quick. If it heals, the fight is over, and I might as well just quit and refresh my MP bar. But it's not enough to just be quick. I also have to be precise and give myself plenty of room to cast without being overwhelmed by hoplites. I need to find the most efficient way to do this in the shortest amount of time possible. If I wait even a little bit, it'll just heal back to full. This fight turned out to be a bit of a problem. I even considered trying again as the magician for the fire spell. But am I really that afraid of just a little challenge? In a run where I may not have many challenges to begin with? Is this really where the run ends? What kind of player am I if I can't even beat the tutorial boss? With those thoughts buzzing around in my head, I knew I could stick it out and overcome this first roadblock. I devised a simple but effective strategy to lure the phalanx into a vulnerable spot. While luck is certainly a big part of it, what worked for me was actively using the pillars to detach the hoplites, instead of blindly running back and forth to both ends of the arena hoping to separate them. When you do this, it forces them to separate from the main body while also blocking them from returning to it. When they're released at the pillars, they end up forming a huge group that acts as a barricade to each other. With the pillar in the way, they stay grouped into this spot and can't move freely to get back to the phalanx, which gives me enough time to find exposed pieces and get some hits in. I have to watch out for the huge group of hoplites behind me, but at least they can't block me from hitting the boss anymore. Like I said, luck is still important. I was practically begging it not to heal at this point, but I managed to finish it off before too many hoplites could reattach to it. With the first boss done, we can level up for the first time. This will be really easy with only 3 stats to focus on. I might as well move on to Stonefang Tunnel. This is where we'll get most of our spells. The enemies here are much stronger, so we'll have to focus on getting rid of a select few that impede our progress. The first run through the level left me with just enough MP to get rid of the enemies blocking the shortcut, and once that's unlocked, we'll rush straight to the boss. Before that, we'll be sure to pick up the Crisp Blade. It gives us a slight boost to our magic damage in return for taking extra magic damage. But it's not even noticeable unless we're dealing with other casters. Seeing that damage, it's clear that MP will not be a problem in this fight. As long as I'm careful, this will be an easy win. Half of the Armor Spider's health bar was gone before it could do its first fire blast, and after that, I carefully made my way back through the tunnel to finish it off. I'm nearly done with intelligence, so I can start getting a few levels into magic and faith. With the hard demon soul in my possession, it's time for me to get a trainer to make some more spells. The Tower of Latria is where my magic starts to get less effective. The enemies here are pretty resistant to magic, so we'll need to have some fire damage on hand if we want to catch up. There are several important things for our build here. The first one is the Wooden Catalyst. It's stronger than the Silver Catalyst, but I won't get the MP boost anymore, so I have to decide which one I think is worth using in different situations. Opening up one of these Iron Maidens will give us the Ring of Magical Sharpness, which does the same thing as the Crisp Blade and will stack with it. After once again proving that I can't make it past the arrow trap, I take the long way and come back to get the Clever Rat's Ring. This will be extremely useful, especially later in the run. I use this NPC to test out my new and improved magic damage, and I can't say that I'm disappointed. The fact that she doesn't know how to roll is also pretty helpful. Sage Frake marks the end of our chores in 3-1, so we'll be sure to pay him a visit in the Nexus before challenging the Fool's Idol. I completely forgot about his apprentice, so I guess now would be a good time to get Flame Toss. Frake will make Fire Spray for us, which has a very low MP cost compared to its damage when fully optimized. Last time I wasn't a dedicated mage build, so I couldn't use this spell to its full potential. This time is different. I have a higher magic stat and am stacking buffs, resulting in much higher damage. Each time she spawns in, I get over 300 damage before she teleports away, which is really good considering the low MP cost. Because this spell is so cheap, I don't have to worry about saving my cast for her. I can use it to take out her clones and still have plenty left over. Another thing about this spell is that it doesn't have to be cast at point blank. It has pretty good range, so I can safely cast from my cover behind a pillar so her clones don't attack me. After getting 7 levels from that fight, I'll go ahead and use her soul to make Soul Ray, since there's no other use for her soul. As we continue on to the Shrine of Storms, progression is going to get much more difficult with our limited MP. This is one of those areas that's really hard to clear without getting rid of the enemies. The rolling skeletons are here to punish players who have had an easy time rushing through everything up to this point. The tight corridors make it especially difficult to weave around them. There's no other way to get past them with our low health if we don't take them out. Flame Toss was a good option for this area, because it's one of my cheaper spells that still manages to kill everything in only a couple of hits. We don't have anything to spend our money on, so we should free Blige to buy some better healing grass to help us out. By the time I make it to the Adjudicator Fog Gate, I've at least got half of my MP bar to work with, and judging from the looks of it, that'll be enough for this fight. As I mentioned in my previous Demon Souls video, I wanted to try to get him to use his left hand. I walked around his back and stood there for a while, but it must be really rare, because his left hand wouldn't budge. So I decided to give it up and proceed with the fight as normal. Who knows, maybe we can still get him to use his left hand. But as usual, the poor guy couldn't even land a hit on me, and with spells, the wound gimmick is skipped entirely, giving him absolutely no chance to defend himself. With all those souls, we can finish leveling intelligence, which means all we have to do now is get magic and faith to 20. Our next goal is to finish up with World 2 to get those precious fire spells from Dragon God. But first, we have to deal with the Flame Lurker. Soul Ray is about as good as it gets against Flame Lurker. He is extremely weak to magic, and fighting him from far away is very easy since he lacks ranged attacks to compensate for his AoE damage. Even as a mage, be careful not to let him catch you off guard. If you get too greedy, he can and will close the distance very fast and punish you accordingly. I'm not completely sure if this is intended or not, but using the terrain as cover is OP in this fight. Just as I'd do when cheesing, I hid behind the bones anytime I needed to heal, and he'd be stuck until I moved out from behind the bones. The ruins in front of the Dragon God Fog Gate are also a good spot. But since he can still attack you here, I feel like this was the intended terrain usage spot. The bones were definitely an oversight. But that's why we love this game. There isn't anything quite as special as the jankiness of Demon Souls. Moving straight ahead to Dragon God, all we have to do is make it to the end, and we'll be able to finish him even with our weakest spell. Breaking the columns wasn't going to be easy. Thankfully, they can be broken with spells, but some spells do more damage than others, and eventually I started just whacking them with my catalyst to speed things up. It didn't seem to be any faster than spells, and it was also much riskier. The catalyst is too slow to use on its own out in the open, and he will always catch me if I try it. The best approach was to use Flame Toss or Soul Arrow to break the distant columns, and use the catalyst only when it's safe to do so. I took a risk by breaking this final column with the catalyst. He kept roaring at me, but he never actually did anything. I guess it was just an empty threat. He's so weak that just 3 shots of Soul Arrow will finish him off, and now the fog has cleared and we can venture further into Boletaria. In other news, we've now reached the maximum level for the playthrough, which is 20 magic, 20 faith, and 30 intelligence. Sage Frake will trade the Dragon Demon Soul for Fireball, which we're going to test right now back in 1-2. With our increased magic power, the Tower Knight won't pose a threat since we were meant to fight him much earlier. The archers can be picked off by one-shotting them with Soul Arrow, ensuring that I can save most of my MP for the boss itself. Despite all that, I somehow managed to screw this up by locking onto the wrong place. Even though I missed one cast, the fight still could have been saved had I realized I was locked onto the wrong place soon enough. Rewatching this, I can see how I got confused. I mean, your character is basically shooting in the same spot. It doesn't really make much sense. For some reason, I tried using the clever rat's ring, got killed by a gust of wind, then came back for a third time, making sure I was locked onto the head, and then I finally beat him. That was a lot more trouble than it was worth. At least now we can start our fat official hunt. We need to take out all of them to free Yuria. I don't know why I was in body form, surely I had my reasons, but in the end, I just couldn't compete with this guy's gravity magic. Without my magic, all I can hope to do is lead my sad little parade into the fire. This worked on the soldier, but the official was too clever to fall for my little trap. After a certain point, he refused to pursue me. I tried to provoke him by beating him with a stick, but he stood his ground. He wasn't so smug anymore when I returned with some fireballs, and the little bit of MP I had left over was enough for his friend in the basement to meet a similar fate. At long last, I could unlock the lone tower where Yuria is imprisoned, and bring her back to the Nexus, where I take every spell she has to offer.
Thank you.
We're gonna go back to the Tower of Latria and finish it up, now that we have some good fire magic. This is one of the nicer areas for rushing through. The enemy layout is sparse in comparison to the Shrine of Storms, and even if we get chased, there's a good chance they'll fall off the map or simply forget about us. Still, beware of rushing through the later part of the level. This came back to bite me when I backed myself into a dead end because the lift takes so long to come back down. I was trying to save my spells for the guys upstairs, and ended up getting pressured off the ledge by the group of gargoyles. After doing another lap through the level, I had finally cleared the way to the man-eaters. With the way cleared, there will be a conveniently placed enemy to get us into RTSR, or Rat Ring range. Most of the time, that just resulted in me getting one-shotted by the jailer, so I decided to try this fight without it first. My positioning was a little off, but even then, the health bar of the man-eater was absolutely devastated. I would expect no less of Firestorm after all. I'm pretty sure you can set him up for a one-shot even without the ring, but I didn't get lucky enough in this case, so I tried to wait for the next one to show up. I was gonna put on the ring to get them both, but I got pounced on. I did make it to the fog gate with the ring after that, but the damage was actually less than it was the first time. My broken catalyst may have had something to do with that. I'm sure I don't need Firestorm to beat them, but it's definitely the most secure way to do it, even if we only have 2 shots. I almost got rid of the first man-eater in one go, and once he hit me into range for the ring, I was mentally preparing myself for my next move. One more shot is all I have, but it should be more than enough. I only need to wait until the perfect moment when their aggression becomes their downfall. And here it is. One had just finished attacking, the other was heading towards me. I wasn't sure if the time was right. I trusted my gut regardless. And in an incredible turn of events, the second man-eater immediately leaped into my cast, finishing it off in a single blow, and since my character was still ducking, he flew right over my head in a situation where I wouldn't have survived otherwise. This is like the most satisfying thing you can do in this game. Everyone hates the man-eaters, so it's mandatory that you use Firestorm if you're a mage. We'll be able to test out our other new spell against the old monk, but before we can do that, we have to clear out the inconveniently placed enemies blocking the entrance. I'm not wasting all my spells on them. So instead, I used a little disappearing magic so I could have a full MP bar for the boss. Ignite is a melee range spell, which should be perfect against him with his tendency to dodge everything. The damage is enough for this fight, but I have to be careful and do my best to not whiff too much. He won't ever dodge it unless I am casting it out of range, but in those cases it wouldn't have hit anyway. Anytime I get up in his face, his first reaction is to try to attack, so I can take advantage of that and even try to chain cast if I'm brave enough. He can't parry spells, so theoretically it's possible to stunlock him to death, but I don't have enough damage to outpace his spells, so it's too risky to try that with my low health. My main problem with this fight was running out of MP and being forced to forfeit. The 15-minute magic act I had to do before the fight each time took a toll on my patience, which reflected poorly on my casting accuracy. But when this guy had the nerve to disrespect me like this, that was it. I had to get my revenge. I wasn't gonna let him get away with humiliating me that hard. I think all this experimentation with builds has made this guy forget his place. I'm willing to play the long game and be patient if it means he has more time to simmer in his own failure. You're just a pushover NPC fight. You're not even a real boss. Don't forget that, old monk. With that fight completed, we can make homing soul arrow and the insanity catalyst in case we get into a situation that calls for it. While Latria was an easy area to run through without using MP, the Valley of Defilement is a different story. You can think of the first part of it as the polar opposite to Latria's enemy layout. There are enemies packed into every platform, around every corner, and hiding in every pile of hay. It's really difficult to get through them without using at least some MP, and for the ones that block the bridge, it's just impossible. No matter which route I take, I have to use some MP to even make it to the boss. Once I accepted that, I played around with my spells to calculate the lowest MP possible per enemy. In most cases, Soul Arrow was my go-to, but to save the most MP, I would line up a group of enemies and pierce through all of them with one shot of Soul Ray. I planned to try out homing Soul Arrow against the Leechmonger, but most of the time they would break against its body, with only one arrow actually hitting the boss. Homing Soul Arrow is not cheap, so it wasn't worth it to waste all my MP for a spell that's doing less damage than my most basic fire spell. Eventually, I found a route to the boss where I could use as little of my MP as humanly possible. I had to be confident and take the plunge to the rock of safety, then drop down again and run for my life until I made it to the bridge past the plague rats. Here, I had to run once again and try to nudge past the fire stick guy to reach the top floor. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The important thing was to stay calm and space out the big dude. Usually, I could just nudge the ticks out of the way, but if I was in a hurry, I would take the poison and keep going. After all that, when it was just one more flame toss away from death, the Leechmonger healed. As frustrating as that was, I at least learned my lesson and stopped being indecisive with my spells so I could just get this eyesore over with. I went back to Ignite for this one because it seemed faster than my other spells and did very big damage that prevented it from healing. Finally, I could make Poison Cloud before proceeding to the next area. And the next area is the Shrine of Storms. I have a lot to do here before I go any further in the Valley of Defilement, so it's best to just get it done now. I'll let Patches have his fun for now. I have to go down here to get the Miracle Trainer anyway, so I won't hold it against him this time. This Katana guy might be a little tricky though. He's a good dodger, so I got a little worried that I wouldn't be able to finish him. All I have to say is that I shouldn't have underestimated an NPC's ability to take care of themselves with a self-damaging weapon. The remainder of the area is the most annoying part. I kept getting hit by the laser ghosts as well, which got old quickly. Areas like the Valley of Defilement almost made me forget that I wouldn't need much of my MP in the first place. So I calmed down and slowly took out the ghosts before taking out my spell of choice for the old hero. You probably know where this is going. We just made Poison Cloud. An old hero is weak to poison. It's the safest way to win this fight, and for the amount of health done by each round of poison, the MP cost is very low. It's not the most exciting way to fight, but in my experience, the old hero holds his own against magic, so I didn't want to take any risks. After this, our only choice is to immediately proceed to the Storm King. I'll admit, this one had been worrying me for a while. I had been keeping it in the back of my mind to try to plan ahead when it comes to getting rid of all the minions. Owing to the fact that there are so many of them, I was worried that I wouldn't actually have enough MP to beat this one. However, one hit of Soul Ray to the Storm King was enough to put my fears to rest, and remind me to stop catastrophizing beforehand when I haven't even tried a fight yet. The Storm King's health is among the lowest of every boss in the game, and you don't even have to kill every Manta Ray to get him to come down. This just shows how silly it was for me to worry about it. I guess what they say is true, confidence is key. It was that same confidence that managed to get me through the Valley of Defilement in body form. I don't know why I take these kinds of risks, but at least it turned out okay in the end. The swamp part is much easier in my opinion, since enemies are limited to small islands. With long range and the Thief's Ring, I got to the first and second fog gate without getting detected, then patiently picked off a few of the enemies to get to the shortcut. As for the Dirty Colossus, I figured I'd start with Firestorm and go from there. I don't know what I was expecting to happen. You don't start with Firestorm, you end with it. It acted so fast that his armor was stuck floating in the air after his body had been completely vaporized. Before challenging the final boss of the level, I wanted to make God's Wrath to give Vinland a taste of his own medicine. There's a small chance I might be able to cast it with his slow weapon. Okay, fine, I admit it, that's not gonna work, it's too slow. Thankfully, we have a wide array of spells to play around with, so we can see what works best against him. Of course, if things get really out of hand, Firestorm is always in the back pocket if we need to end it quickly. Every now and then I would flash it in the spell wheel to remind him who's really in control here. This guy thinks he's winning. Little does he know, I'm just using him as a toy to test my spells. I experimented with different things, such as casting God's Wrath from behind him, to testing magic and fire damage against his shield. As I did every time, I first got my health into ring range by using the torches in the Dirty Colossus arena, then fell back to my old reliable Ignite. He takes reduced damage while blocking, but I learned that I can cast this infinitely and he'll never react. I somehow got him to half health with this one weird trick. I only stopped when my MP began to get low. At this point, I had to bait out some attacks so I could get full damage. This was the most pathetic fight I've ever seen him put up for Estrella. Like the Dirty Colossus, she too vaporized from the secondhand embarrassment, leaving behind only the Ring of Sincere Prayer for our single miracle. Before we wrap up the run in Boletaria, we'll speak with the Freaky Sage one last time to make Deathcloud. Thankfully, most of my work here is done, since I took care of the fat officials and opened the gate. I had a plan for this fight already. I would cast Deathcloud, infect the Penetrator with the Plague, and get in a few casts of Homing Soul Arrow while I waited. At first, everything seemed to be going okay. It was clear I would need a little practice with aiming it, but as long as I could get him to step inside, he'd get infected, and it would be smooth sailing. But he never did. No matter how many times I cast it, and no matter how long I got him to stay in the cloud, all 3 wikis said he was susceptible to the plague. So surely I wasn't doing anything wrong, right? Seriously, am I doing something wrong? This whole situation genuinely confused me. Is the official guide wrong, and nobody has checked the parameters yet to confirm his resistances? If anyone knows for sure that he is immune to plague, please let me know in the comments so I can have some peace of mind. It certainly seemed like he was immune, To test my theory, I decided to cast Poison Cloud instead, which should be identical to Death Cloud in terms of range and build-up rate. And sure enough, he got infected with the poison instantaneously, which implies that he probably is immune to plague after all. I left the fight after that because I didn't want to use poison again. I haven't really gotten to use Homing Soul Arrow, so my mind was made up that that's what I'd use to beat him. First, I needed to test it out with my maximum damage output, which is the Insanity Catalyst combined with all my other buffs. It was kinda hard to tell if that would be enough, but it would only take 3 casts to answer that question, so I went through with it. As you can see, it was almost enough, but not quite. So we'll have to change our strategy. There's still one more thing I haven't had to use yet, and that is the Morian Blade. With this, we can achieve the infamous Hyper Mode setup. On top of our Clever Rats ring that is giving us a 50% boost to damage, this thing is going to give us another 60%. According to the wiki, this actually gives a 140% damage boost rather than 110, which, when stacked with our Ring of Magical Sharpness, will be some insane damage. I'm glad to finally be done with that, but I feel bad for not giving Death Cloud anything to do. The good news is, its usefulness hasn't ended just yet. There are 3 pesky phantoms in our way that all happen to be weak to plague. We can even get 2 in one cloud, then wait by the Archstone as they slowly wither away. Once I finally made it to the last perch of the blue dragon, I found that even my strongest magic was not enough to kill it. If I can't kill it, I'll simply have to keep running past it each time I challenge a Lunt. I know that a Lunt has high magic resistance, so to get rid of his health, I'm going to use Firestorm to send him out with a bang. I correctly dodged the first time, but he cheated by canceling his animation on the stairs to fake me out. This run back became really painful just when I thought I had it figured out. I kept getting stuck at this point where the dragon catches me with its fire before I can make it to the door. This never happens to me, but it happened consistently in this run, which was even more frustrating when combined with the red-eyed knights I had to weave through to even get to the bridge. I couldn't kill the dragon. I just didn't have enough MP no matter how you slice it. But I'm not giving up yet. I still have one more trick up my sleeve. I bet some of you already know what I'm up to, just from the fact that I'm in Stonefang Tunnel. This is going to be really easy to do with all the ephemeral eyes I've saved up. All I have to do is throw myself off the cliff until World Tendency gets to pure black. A couple casts of Soul Ray will be enough to deal with Scurver, and there it will be, waiting for us, the Talisman of Beasts. Despite being a talisman, it can also cast magic. Not only that, but it's the best catalyst in the game aside from the Insanity Catalyst. The difference in damage versus my wooden catalyst against the blue dragon was no joke. All the time spent in getting it was worth it. I was finally able to take it down in a single MP bar. I even had some to spare to take out the Black Phantom guarding the arena. Knowing that the dragon was gone cleared my mind enough for me to fight a Lunt without being a complete moron. This time I didn't overthink it, and casted Firestorm as soon as he stopped attacking. I was going for a one-shot, but I guess this will do. Wait, 900 damage with just Soul Ray? Okay then, maybe I didn't need Firestorm at all. Oh well, it's always fun to use it anyways.
How did you defeat my precious demon?
With Firestorm? Well, I promised to use every spell, and there's one that's just been sitting around doing nothing this entire time. There's no way it could fail me against King Alunt. I don't care how difficult he is. Alright, about 1200 damage. That's actually not looking good against the rest of his health bar. Are you kidding me? How much health does a blob even need? Why is God's Wrath such a small step up from my other spells? Dude, are you serious right now? You know what? I don't care. If we have to be boring, we have to be boring. Soul Ray it is. But we've at least got to go in for the God's Wrath finisher. I think we all knew deep down that the bosses were going to be a piece of cake even with the MP limit in place. But the real challenge of Demon Souls has always been the levels. This run was no exception. The most difficult and fun part was finding a way to make it to the end of each level with enough MP to beat the boss. I enjoyed testing out each spell and pushing it to its limits. And of course the occasional times where I got to melt things with Firestorm. As always, I hope you enjoyed watching this playthrough, and you can look forward to another one in the near future.